was the insignificant little wife in Xanthus's eyes. Even when my foster father forced us to get a marriage license, he refused to comply. Every time my foster father fell ill, I would call him and beg him to come home. But he took it as a way for me and my foster father to manipulate him. And after hanging up the phone, he would go to a hotel with his first love and party all night long. When I gave him my foster father's critical illness notice, he slapped me. He said I was the person he trusted most and shouldn't have lied to him with his father. To spite us, he live-streamed his honeymoon on the family group chat. But he didn't know that was the last day of my foster father's life. While he was having a romantic getaway with his first love, my foster father closed his eyes forever. After taking care of my foster father's funeral, I packed my bags and moved out of Xanthus's house. On the day of the funeral, I looked at the urn in my hand. My foster father's photo was pasted in the middle with a bright smile. He looked just like he did when he took me from the orphanage to the Xanthus family. Xanthus was supposed to be holding this box, but no one could find him. Quinn, what's the use of you? Growing up with Xanthus, you still let him run away with someone else. My second uncle's rage was like the cold wind in late autumn, and all the Xanthus family members present couldn't help but shiver. Since the eldest son of the Xanthus family couldn't be found, I, Xanthus's foster daughter-in-law, was naturally the best scapegoat. Ignoring the disdain and contempt around me, I quietly lowered my head and gently stroked my foster father's photo. At the cemetery, the Xanthus family had already left, and I stood alone in front of my foster father's grave. Dad, I'm leaving too. I tried to squeeze out a faint smile, but 2 lines of tears failed me. My phone rang, and I mechanically answered it. Quinn, you and the old man have put in a lot of effort this time, calling the whole family to me. I still say the same thing. When will you stop using these despicable methods to trick me back home? And when will I go to see the old man? I said hoarsely, there's no next time. He had never seen me give in before, and when he heard my words, he suddenly laughed excitedly. That's better. Quinn, you are my wife. You shouldn't have joined forces with others to deceive me, not even my father. I didn't say anything else and hung up the phone. I had been in the Xanthus family for 14 years, and it was my foster father who took care of me, helped me take over the family business, and helped me become the vice president of the company. But in Xanthus's eyes, this was evidence that my foster father favored me. He called me a lapdog of the Xanthus family. But without me, this lapdog, how could he disappear whenever he wanted? How could the people of the Xanthus family never trouble him? I wearily returned to the Xanthus house, and a courier delivered a package to me. Inside was a set of jade ornaments and my foster father's handwritten letter. Quinn, happy birthday. My tears started to well up again. Every year, he was the only one who remembered the day he brought me to the Xanthus family as my birthday. He said he would give me a real coming-of-age gift when I officially became a member of the Xanthus family management, and I didn't expect him to actually prepare it. Dad. Looking at the gift, I called out unconsciously. My sobs echoed in the empty house. For so many years, I had already regarded him as my own father. I only regretted that I had spent too much time on Xanthus and hadn't had time to spend with him. As night fell, I left the Xanthus house with my packed luggage. Without my foster father, I had no reason to stay here. At night, I received a call from Xanthus. Quinn, you know I brought Rhea back today, and you deliberately made things difficult for me, right? You didn't even make dinner or pour me a cup of tea. You're the wife of the Xanthus family. How can you act like this? Are you deliberately trying to embarrass me? Since I'm talking to you nicely, come back quickly. Before I could speak, he started yelling at me like a string of firecrackers. Do you think I'm giving you face by coming back? You have to have some limits when you throw a tantrum. With guests here, don't you know what you should do? You've been with me for so many years, and you're still so useless. You're not even as good as Rhea. For all these years, whenever he brought a woman home, I pretended to treat her as an ordinary guest, giving him enough face, but I suffered all the humiliation myself. I originally thought he disliked me because I was too motherly and took care of too many things. But now I understand that he was just enjoying my efforts, and he did everything he could to step on me to show his status. I interrupted him gently. Xanthus, I'm not your maid. He was stunned for a moment on the other end of the phone. I hung up the phone directly. 2. I installed a smart camera in Xanthus's house to take care of my foster father. The laptop popped up the live footage of the living room in Xanthus's house, and I followed the sound. Xanthus, having been hung up on twice by me, smashed his phone in anger. Don't be angry, let's order takeout. Maybe Quinn is busy and didn't notice her way of speaking was wrong. Ria's eyes flickered, and with just one sentence, she made Xanthus detest me to the extreme. Wrong way of speaking. He sneered. I think she knows that my dad will favor her, so she dares to say that. I really don't know who is my dad's real child. A picked-up orphan can be treated like a treasure. How could the old man think so? I feel ashamed to go out with her. Xanthus hugged Ria, and when he mentioned me, he wrinkled his nose as if I were something dirty. Seeing his appearance, my nose turned sour. The next day, I was splashed with water by a speeding car in front of my company building. The car window rolled down, revealing Xanthus's gloating smile. Oh, isn't this the darling of Wallace? Why are you so miserable? I ignored him, took out a wet wipe from my bag, and casually wiped the water off my body. Xanthus's smile froze on his face. You stay here. He opened the car door and grabbed my arm. Quinn, do you really think I can't do anything to you because your father is protecting you? In the past, I never dared to confront Xanthus like this. Every time, I would meekly do all the work for him, block the arrows and hidden arrows for him in the company, and then patiently listen to his complaints and sarcasm, giving all the credit to him. And he had long been accustomed to my concessions, and took for granted the results and admiration I gave him. But this time, I didn't want to let him have his way. I looked up and threw his hand off forcefully. Xanthus, it's always been you that Dad has protected, but it's also you who has disappointed him the most. He was a little flustered by my repeated indifference. Quinn, don't make a fuss. I'll give you a step down, just come back to me. I've always said that you are my wife. No matter how I play outside, you are still my wife. Can't you have some of the appearance of being Mrs. Xanthus? I glanced at Ria behind him and pointed at the water stain on my body. Mr. Xanthus's step is really unique. He was stunned by my sarcastic remark, and he watched me walk away before he could react. Quinn, if you dare leave, I won't have a wife like you anymore. I didn't stop walking. I had already drafted the divorce agreement, and I was tired of this life that was even worse than a mistress. Ria, looking at Xanthus with a chest that was heaving up and down, quickly put on a self-blaming expression and grabbed Xanthus, who was about to chase after me. It's all my fault. If it weren't for me, Sister Ophelia wouldn't be so angry with you. Xanthus pulled her hand away and stopped chasing me. She's been with me for 14 years, and she still doesn't know who's in charge. I don't care about a dog that can't be raised. Hearing his words, I felt a deep chill. For 4 years of marriage, I was just a dog in his eyes that couldn't be raised properly. He looked at my back and raised his voice. I'll see how you explain to my father when I'm not in the company. After saying that, he turned and got into the car. I ignored him and continued walking. 2 hours later, Xanthus posted on social media. What a beautiful day, out on the town with my lovely lady. Attached was a photo of him and Ria kissing in a sports car, champagne flutes in hand. I also received an intimate photo of them hugging tightly. Quinn, if I were you, I wouldn't have the nerve to cling to the position of Mrs. Xanthus. It was a message from Ria's burner account. She'd sent me messages like this countless times over the years. Knowing her two-faced nature in front of Xanthus, I felt no anger. I stood before my foster father's grave, holding a white chrysanthemum. Dad, I'm leaving, I said softly. I'm leaving everything at the Xanthus house to Xanthus. I stood there for a long time, until the sun began to set. As I was getting into my car at the foot of the hill, someone blocked my path. Xanthus appeared suddenly, a private investigator standing beside him. Who was she with this afternoon? He demanded, turning to the detective. The detective looked at him, puzzled. Who? Xanthus impatiently flicked his cigarette to the ground. His eyes narrowed in anger. I asked you, who was Quinn with behind my back? The detective gave him a strange look and pointed towards the cemetery. Ms. Quinn went there this afternoon. I frowned. He had actually hired someone to follow me. Xanthus glared at me and grabbed my wrist, pulling me up the hill. When we reached my foster father's grave, Xanthus trembled and his eyes turned red. Quinn, what is this? I spoke softly. This is Dad's grave. While you were romancing Rhea, Dad passed away because of you. He looked at me incredulously. Impossible. You and Dad must be lying to me again. It's impossible. As if suddenly remembering something, he grabbed my hand and rushed down the hill towards the Xanthus house. My foster father's room showed no signs of being lived in. He pointed at the tea table and turned to me. Where are Dad's teacups? He drank tea every day. Who took them away? And his walnuts? He played with those walnuts all the time. Where are they? I looked coldly at him, on the verge of collapse. He walked around the room, then collapsed helplessly into my foster father's armchair. How could this be? How could this be? Could it be that everything Quinn said was true all these years? You just wanted to deceive me, didn't you? You old man. I'll do whatever you say. Just come out. I found the gift my foster father had prepared for me and placed it beside him. We never lied to you. Dad was very sick, and he wanted to see you before he died, but you wouldn't listen to anyone. And you even posted videos and photos of you and Rhea on the family group chat. He clutched his head in pain and curled up on the floor. I sighed and turned to leave, but to my surprise, Xanthus didn't give up. He went back to the company. Xanthus, when are we going on our outing? Rhea stood behind him coquettishly. Xanthus frowned as he looked through the documents on his desk. I haven't been to the company for more than 2 months, so I have to deal with some work. Rhea glanced at the documents on the desk and observed his expression intentionally. Sister Quinn is so capable, she can handle everything. If you let her continue for a few more years, you can rest assured and hand over the company to her. Xanthus's face darkened. My father has always cultivated her with all his heart. He went straight to my office. Quinn, you're no longer the vice president of the company starting today. I looked at the 2 medicine bottles I had just received, my hands trembling slightly. Those weren't the regular medications my foster father should have been taking. They were just ordinary vitamins. No wonder my foster father suddenly fell ill and was hospitalized. I thought carefully, and the only ones who could have access to those medications were Xanthus and me. Quinn, did you hear what I said? I looked up angrily at Xanthus's arrogant face and slapped him. I couldn't believe that he had actually switched my foster father's medication. Quinn. Xanthus was stunned by my slap and called out my name. I looked directly into his eyes. From today on, I'm no longer your wife. You can make anyone you want the vice president of the Xanthus company. Rhea stood in front of him. Quinn, what do you think you have if you leave the Xanthus family? If it weren't for Xanthus, could you be the vice president of the Xanthus company? Xanthus finally reacted when he heard her words, and his eyes were on fire. Quinn, I dare you to say that again. I took out the divorce agreement that I had prepared long ago and threw it at him, then left the office decisively. Divorce? 4. You're threatening me with divorce just because I won't make you a vice president? Stop right there. Xanthus's voice came from behind me. I turned around, and his hands were trembling slightly, his eyes filled with a barely perceptible panic. Xanthus, I don't want anything from you, not even this vice president position. With that, I walked over to my desk, picked up my bag, and left without looking back. When I first joined the Xanthus company, I just wanted to help my foster father lighten his load, but now I have no reason to stay. Standing outside the company building, looking at everything that was familiar, my eyes felt a little sore. When my foster father first brought me here, he said this would be my second home. But now, I'm a homeless child again. A dark shadow appeared before my eyes, and the whole world began to blur. I instinctively took out a piece of chocolate and put it in my mouth. I've had low blood sugar for years, and carrying candy has become a habit. When the darkness faded, I forced myself to leave, and my phone rang. Quinn, the first shareholder meeting after Dad's passing is tomorrow. Don't be late. There was a hint of plea in the voice on the other end of the phone, and I hummed in response. It was good. Even if I had nothing to do with the Xanthus family in the future, I should still do something for my foster father. Back at the hotel, I immediately checked all the surveillance footage from the past 3 months and finally found the truth about the medicine switch. 2 months ago, Xanthus was so drunk that Rhea and a strange man helped him back to the Xanthus house. Later, the man took out a bottle of medicine and gave it to Rhea while he stood guard at the door. Rhea went into my foster father's room, and when she came out, the medicine was gone. Looking at the date in the corner, I gripped the water cup tighter. That day was Xanthus's birthday. My foster father had booked a family banquet at a 5-star hotel, and we didn't go home until 2 in the morning. And that gave Rhea the opportunity to harm my foster father. I immediately contacted my friends and asked them to help me investigate Rhea and the man in the surveillance footage. To my surprise, they were a married couple. And even more absurdly, her husband was wanted for fraud. After carefully reviewing their information, I contacted the victim of the fraud. If they knew that those scammers were living a good life now, they wouldn't let them go so easily. I would provide them with this opportunity. 5. At the shareholders' meeting, as soon as I entered, I saw Rhea sitting in my seat, and everyone in the company was whispering about us. Mr. Xanthus, this seat is for the vice president. It's one thing to bring this woman to a shareholders' meeting, but what does it mean to have her sit here? An older shareholder questioned. Rhea glanced at Xanthus and smiled. Mr. Xanthus just promoted me to vice president yesterday. I hope everyone will take care of me in the future. She thought she was being generous and dignified, but no one in the meeting room bought it. Chairman Wallace said that the company should have its own system. We recognize ability, not relationships. Rhea's face turned pale at these words, and she tugged at Xanthus's sleeve pitifully. Xanthus patted her hand reassuringly and turned to the shareholder indifferently. Are you questioning my decision? After all, I am the heir of the Xanthus family, and I would never joke about the Xanthus family company. Rhea graduated from Stanford and has experience working on Wall Street. She will definitely do a better job as vice president than Quinn. The one who is truly incompetent is Quinn, and now that I've divorced her, she has no right to sit in this position. Hearing him say this, the shareholder smiled awkwardly. I didn't realize Miss Rhea had such abilities. Rhea smiled happily. Well, you're all my seniors, and I still need to continue to work hard. With that, she sat up straight next to Xanthus, looking at everyone with arrogance in her eyes. I sneered inwardly. A Stanford graduate? A Wall Street elite? She probably hasn't even left the country. I didn't look at her, but quietly sat in a corner, waiting for the show to begin. Xanthus noticed my actions and deliberately put his arm around Rhea's waist, looking very intimate. I closed my eyes and pretended not to see anything. These past few days, I had been ignoring him, and he was naturally angry. After all, this young master was always used to others making him uncomfortable, and he had never been made uncomfortable by others. You didn't even notify me about the shareholders' meeting after Chairman Wallace passed away. Hearing this voice, Xanthus's expression changed. It was Vaughn, the youngest son of the Vaughn family. The Vaughn family was the largest shareholder of the company, and even my foster father had to show them respect. Beauty, can I sit next to you? Looking at this man who was both bichisuju and elegant, I smiled slightly. Please. He pulled out a chair and glanced at Rhea unintentionally. Mr. Xanthus has a good eye. Xanthus didn't understand what he meant, but he didn't say anything. Just as he was about to announce the start of the meeting, Vaughn stopped him. I'm not interested in this meeting. I'm here to seek justice from Mr. Xanthus. As soon as he finished speaking, the meeting room was in an uproar. Xanthus stared at him. What do you mean? Vaughn pointed at Rhea, and the smile on his face disappeared completely. Your woman here owes my sister an explanation. 6. What does he mean? Xanthus looked at Rhea, his brow furrowed. Rhea glanced at him blankly and quickly explained. Xanthus, I've never seen this person before. I've been with you every day. How could I have time to meet others? Vaughn snapped his fingers, and his assistant, who had come with him, immediately distributed the documents he had brought. We haven't met her before, but her husband cheated my sister out of her money and drove her to depression. Mr. Xanthus, how do you explain this? Xanthus's face turned as black as a pot. He snatched a document and began to read. Rhea. Hearing his angry shout, Rhea quickly got up and took the document he threw at her. The more she read, the more frightened she became, and her hands trembled so much she could barely hold the papers. Vaughn sneered at her sight. This woman is not the overseas returnee and wealthy heiress she claims to be. She and her husband are both Chertocherwe de Panzik. 5 years ago, her husband pretended to be a high-ranking official's son to approach my sister. Later, my friends discovered his true identity. He cheated my family out of millions, and then went on the run. My sister went to find her, but she was pushed down the stairs by her, and became a vegetable, and she hasn't woken up since. The meeting room was dead silent, only the sound of Xanthus's clenched fists cracking. No. No. Xanthus, listen to me. Rhea called out to Xanthus without confidence, but he kicked her away when she tried to approach him. Get away from me, you bitch. Everyone in the meeting room had seen her files, and they all looked at her with disgust. Several shareholders took the opportunity to attack Xanthus. Mr. Xanthus, how could you let such a person be the vice president? Are you worthy of Chairman Wallace? You're messing up your own private life, and you're angering your father. Now you want her to ruin the Xanthus family company? On what basis do you lead the Xanthus family company? Hearing the questioning around him, Xanthus smashed a cup. The loud crash brought a brief silence to the meeting room. My personal matters with this woman have nothing to do with the company. I won't let her appear here again, and I will give everyone an explanation. With that, he took out his phone and was about to call the police. Rhea hugged his leg, tears streaming down her face. Xanthus, please don't call the police, I'll be ruined. Xanthus called for security and had her dragged out to wait for the police. Mr. Vaughn, you and your sister can handle this matter yourselves. I won't get involved. Vaughn looked at him playfully. Not involved. Mr. Xanthus is so generous. 7. Xanthus frowned, forcing down his anger. She broke the law, and she should pay for her actions. Besides, we have nothing between us. Vaughn nudged my arm. You didn't tell him about Chairman Wallace? Xanthus looked at us, a sudden panic in his eyes. He pulled me away from Vaughn. Quinn is my wife, and I hope Mr. Vaughn will respect that. If you need money, I'm willing to contribute on behalf of the Xanthus family. Vaughn laughed as if looking at a fool. Xanthus, do you really think everyone is as shallow as you? Rhea switched your father's medication, which is why he fell ill. You didn't even pursue that, and you're still romancing her? Xanthus took a half step back, his body stiff, unable to believe his ears. What did you say? Vaughn pointed at me with his chin. Your own son cares less about you than your adopted daughter. If I were Chairman Wallace, I'd be so angry I'd come back from the dead. Xanthus turned to look at me. I took out the surveillance footage from my phone. As he watched, his eyes reddened, and he took several involuntary steps back. Impossible. He turned around and rushed towards Rhea, ignoring everything else. You bitch! Why did you hurt my father? The police, who had just arrived, immediately stopped him, and the meeting room was in chaos. Seeing that everything had been revealed, I handed the evidence to the police. In the meeting room behind me, the shareholders were asking questions one after another. Mr. Xanthus, if this gets out, the company's stock price will definitely plummet. What are you going to do? With your actions, you even managed to kill Chairman Wallace. How can we trust you to lead the Xanthus family company? The Xanthus family company doesn't belong to you alone. We demand a new chairman to be elected. Xanthus would have to face these questions sooner or later, and I wasn't willing to help him anymore. I gradually walked away from the whirlpool behind me, and only when I stood in the sunlight did my body slowly warm up. Looking at the jade bracelet on my wrist, the Witra and Yi I had been feeling for so many days finally burst out, and my tears flowed uncontrollably. Dad, I'm alone again. Where should I go? Vaughn's voice sounded. The Vaughn family owes you a favor for this. I quickly wiped away my tears and smiled generously. I've already decided to leave the Xanthus family, and I probably won't see you again. He shrugged and smiled slyly. Maybe not. 8. I quickly understood what he meant. My assistant called, and told me the contents of my foster father's will. It turned out he had given me shares in another company, and the current general manager of that company, named VQ, was Vaughn. After reading the document sent by my assistant, I felt a warm feeling in my heart. Uncle Wallace said that Xanthus made you suffer a lot. If you want, you can come to work at VQ anytime, and Uncle Wallace will support you. He took a step towards me, and I looked up at the tissue he handed me. Don't cry. Uncle Wallace really treated you like his own daughter. You're not alone anymore. I wiped my tears, only to realize that I had been crying for a long time. On my first day at work, Xanthus's second uncle found out somehow. Quinn, no matter what, you're still the daughter-in-law of the Xanthus family. Now that Xanthus is being watched by the shareholders, he can hardly keep his position as general manager. How can you go to work for another company? I took out the shares my foster father had left me and showed them to my second uncle. Second uncle, this company is also Dad's company, and Xanthus has already fired me, and he has signed the divorce agreement. We have nothing to do with each other. My second uncle rolled his eyes angrily. You ungrateful bitch. Your father-in-law has just passed away, and you can't wait to betray him. This company name is interesting, VQ. One Q must be you. And the other V is who? I thought my brother was really killed by that bastard Xanthus, but now it seems like you, this wild seed, killed him. I grabbed Vaughn's sleeve to stop him from getting angry. Second uncle, I met Mr. Vaughn at the shareholders' meeting, and we are innocent. Don't talk nonsense. As soon as I finished speaking, another voice sounded. VQ Company is funded by the Vaughn family and operates medical equipment, and the name Viviank is related to the daughter of the Vaughn family. It has nothing to do with Quinn. I turned around slowly. After a few days, Xanthus had become more calm, and his whole person exuded a restrained aura, but the dark circles under his eyes were deep, revealing a trace of fatigue. He glanced at me and naturally took my hand. Quinn is still my wife, and I'm here today to congratulate her on her new job. I hope second uncle won't spread rumors. I pulled my hand away and turned to the side politely. Mr. Xanthus, don't joke. It's over between us. His hand paused, and he looked at me and Vaughn with a sense of loss. Is it because of him? It was clearly his own words, but now he was blaming me. I felt a wave of helplessness and no longer wanted to argue with him. I simply linked my arm with Vaughn's. Yes. My second uncle pulled at his collar anxiously. She still has a share of the company. You can't let her marry into the Vaughn family. Xanthus pulled his tie and pulled his second uncle in front of him. Second uncle, although the shareholders have restricted some of my authority as general manager, I am still the heir of the Xanthus family, and I don't need to use a woman as a bargaining chip. After saying that, he gave me a deep look and left with his second uncle. I sighed. Xanthus, we're done. 9. After that day, I never saw Xanthus again. Everything at VQ went smoothly, and with Vaughn's help, I quickly gained everyone's recognition. Dad, I have my own career now, I said softly, placing a bouquet of white chrysanthemums in front of my foster father's grave. I looked at the photo on the tombstone and smiled happily. Whoosh! A whistling sound pierced the air. I turned around in alarm, seeing a knife aimed at me. A burly man walked towards me. Recognizing his face, I turned and ran. It was Ria's husband. You bitch! You put my wife in prison. I'm going to kill you. He caught up with me quickly, and with a powerful force, he lifted me up and threw me to the ground. I told you not to run. D. I watched helplessly as the knife plunged towards me, but I had no strength to break free from his grip. Just as I closed my eyes in despair, I heard a shattering sound. The man was knocked over. I looked down and saw the jade pendant my foster father had given me, blocking the fatal blow. Xanthus knelt on him, pinning him to the ground and tying his hands and feet with his belt. Quinn, are you okay? Are you hurt? He helped me up anxiously, checking me for any injuries. I was still terrified and looked at the broken jade pendant and burst into tears. He held me tightly, his heart aching. Quinn, I'll never leave you again. Let's start over. I sobbed. Xanthus, we can't go back. He didn't say anything else, but a tear rolled down his cheek. He walked me back to my residence, and stopped me suddenly. "Quinn." I turned around confused. He smiled at me, just like the first time we met. "Be happy, okay?" Before I could reply, he disappeared into the street. My nose felt sour. This was really the last time. Vaughn appeared and blocked my view. "He's gone now." I sniffed. "I know." He sighed and handed me a bouquet of peonies. "Just look at the people around you." I looked at him in surprise, but noticed his ears were red, and even his neck was slowly turning red. I smiled and took the flowers, turning to go home. "I'll see how you do."